Hello everybody, welcome to Catherine Sews. Thanks so much for joining me today. Today I'm going to do another thrift flip. This time though, it's going to be easier than my last one. What I have to work with today is, first of all, this gray cashmere turtleneck, which is just, I love gray, I love cashmere. It's just soft as a dream and beautiful, but it's far too snug, which is not only unflattering, but it's also really uncomfortable and kind of suffocating. So to fix that problem, I've got this gray lace top that I used just a little bit of it to just decrease the neckline in this video that I'll link here. So there's a lot of that gray lace left, and I think that's going to be really pretty. So that'll give me extra room plus extra ventilation. And then to go with that, well, I have this. I fell in love with this dress. I just was really drawn to the fabric, and it was like, I think something like $3 or $4, like dirt. This is all dirt cheap, but I just thought the fabric was really pretty, and I fell in love with that hemline. It's sort of a subtle high-low, and it's got this little ruffle on it, which is so pretty, but the dress hangs flat in the front, which is not the best look for me. I don't do well with dresses that are flat in the front because I'm not particularly flat in the front. I think it'll be more flattering, and I'll get more use out of it if I turn it into a skirt, which is not going to be difficult at all. That's going to be really quick. I think it'll look beautiful with that turtleneck as kind of a daytime look, something that I would very happily wear to work. Or I can put it with this top that I also thrifted for a more dressy look, something I would wear out for dinner. Making the dress into a skirt is going to be, I think, quite simple, so let's start with that. As I'm just starting, if you have dresses and tops that have these little loops, just cut them off. Their only purpose is to stop the garment from falling off the hanger, mainly while it's in the store. If you're not going to use these to hang up your garment, then just get rid of them. It just ruins the whole look when you see one of these loops sticking out, so just cut those off. Looking at that hemline, I think I'm actually going to take the dress an inch or two longer. So I will be putting this wide black elastic as the waistband, and that's going to be like quite a nice fast little way to turn this dress into a skirt. But to get started, I'm just going to use a white piece of elastic and wrap that around me and then pin that closed around my waist. So if I was just going the same length, then this would be the perfect waist. For me, I'm going to go a couple inches higher than this. I want to make sure I've got the lining and the outer fabric kind of hanging nicely together. So I'll throw a few pins all around just above that elastic. And you know what? The fact that it's a high-low is going to make that easier because I don't have to make sure that the hem ends up perfectly level. You know what I mean? If I kind of mess this up and wobble a bit, nobody's going to be able to tell. So I think I'm ready to chop off the top of the dress. So here's my line of pins. That's roughly where I want to cut it. And I want to see if the back pins and the front pins kind of are lining up or if there's a difference. Oh yes, they are right on top of each other. That's nice. You always do want to be careful when you've got pins in the area that you want to cut, because you can wreck your scissors really easily if you cut over where a pin is. And I'll cut just above those pins. Now I want to pin back the two layers together, the lining to the outer fabric. Okay, so now I'm pinned around the whole top edge. I think what I'll do is run a little basting stitch right around there. So I'm just going to sew close to that top edge, and then I'll be attaching it to the elastic. So before I go to the machine, I'm just going to spool off enough elastic, and I just wrapped it around my waist and just made a little bit of an overlap, really not much at all, and I'll just cut right there. So while I'm at the machine doing that basting stitch, I'm also going to just sew this little seam together as well. So I want to sew this fairly close to the edge so that this seam line doesn't end up showing and I don't have to bother unpicking it later. And this line of stitching is just to keep the lining together with the outer fabric. If it wasn't lined, I wouldn't bother doing this basting stitch. I'm just putting the two ends together of the elastic. And you can see the elastic is going to fray like that. So I can either run to the serger or I could zigzag. And for a little thing like this, I might just zigzag. And then to keep that sitting nicely, I'm going to push to one side and just stitch that down. So now to put the elastic in quickly, I'm going to quarter mark it. And so here, that seam that I just sewed is going to be the center back. If I fold it right on the seam, and I'll put a pin or a wax mark opposite the seam, that's going to be the center front. bring those 2 points, the seam and my pin together, and then that shows me the 2 side seams. So the waistband is quarter marked. The skirt already has a side seam and a center back seam, but I want to also mark the center front. So I'm bringing the 2 side seams together and mark the center front, also just with a pin. And I'm just flipping the skirt inside out. The center back seam of the skirt is going to go right sides together with the center back of my waistband. Next pin goes to the side seam. The next pin goes to the center front, and the last one goes to the other side seam. Okay, so now it's pinned around in 4 sections. They should be relatively even. Yeah, that's fine. And now, still with my straight stitch, I'm going to be sewing these right side together. The lining is sticking out a little bit more, so I'll just be mindful of that as I go around. I've got the edge of my presser foot running along the side of the elastic. Once that back tack is done, then I'm going to pick up the next pin and just stretch the elastic out. And I want it to meet the top of the fabric. You see what I mean? That the lining is sticking out more. I don't want to put it to the edge of the lining because I might miss the edge of the fabric. So I'll pull that out, and then I'm going to grab halfway in between and holding it in that stretched out position now, keeping the edge of my presser foot along the edge of the elastic. Here we go. So there's not a big difference between the circumference of the skirt and the circumference of my elastic, and so I don't have to stretch a lot. But if this was a much wider dress, I'd have to really stretch this. Next pin comes out, and then I grab the next pin and stretch, bringing my edge of the elastic together with the edge of the fabric. Now I'm just going to check to make sure I did not miss the edge of the fabric anywhere. It's looking pretty good. And then I'll just try it on and make sure the whole thing is good before I finish that edge. I tried it on, it's really lovely. So I'm going to finish my edges on the serger, but you could finish your edges with just a zigzag. Or if your fabric isn't going to fray and you're not worried, you probably can get away with not finishing your edges. Okay, so the serger does a lovely job of finishing the edge. That looks just great. This is done. Okay, so this little cashmere turtleneck it's cashmere, it's beautiful, it's soft, but it's way too snug on every part of my torso. I wouldn't last 5 minutes, I would die. And so I really need to expand it. I need to make this bigger, so I have to add fabric in some way that makes it look like I meant to do that. I mean, I could put that strip of lace all the way down the side like this, but what I would kind of rather have is a strip here and a strip here, just because I think it would look pretty. I also like the shoulder seam is way in here. I might set like a little cap of lace in here as well. So I'm going to play around with that. I don't know, it's all an experiment. On a knit like this, if you peek inside this little tiny seam, you're going to see like a perfect little chain there. It's either going to undo more easily from the bottom or from the top. And if I can't get it going here at the bottom, then I'll go to the top of this section I'm trying to undo and try to get it going there. Okay, well this is no fun. It's going to take me a while to undo this. But I mean, I could just cut it. I'm hardly losing any seam allowance, but I'm afraid that if I cut it, the knit's going to unravel, and so this is coming out a tiny bit at a time. So I'm going to go find a comfy chair and unpick the side seam and the armhole here. I've already got side seams opened up and the sleeve mostly removed. And before I take the last bit of the sleeve out, I thought it would be smart to just mark which sleeve is which. So I'm going to put a mark on both sides of the center. The red for right is all I need. As I've been opening this seam, I've been trying to not destroy the edge, because each of the pieces of a sweater is knit so that it has a finished edge. I found it pretty hard to open that without damaging that edge. With the sleeves free, finally, I think I'll just run scissors right up the middle there. Okay, the sleeves on this lace top they're raglan sleeves, so I've got this long piece of lace here with a cuff on the end. So I'm thinking I might try to use that cuff as part of the design here. How big do I actually need this sleeve to be? what's a pleasant proportion. So at the widest point here, I've got 2.5 inches on the fold. I'll need to add a bit of seam allowance too, so I'll call that 3 inches on the fold. Probably end up taking less at the cuff, but I'll cut it at the full 3 inches. Okay, I'm just going to taper it off to the elbow. I think that'll make a prettier sleeve. That looks like a nicer shape, doesn't it? I'll pin both edges of both sleeves, just like that, and then I'm just going to serge. If you don't have a serger, that's okay. You can sew and then zigzag your edges. If you have an overlock stitch on your machine, that'll work beautifully as well. But I'm just going to take these straight to the serger. So with them both pinned, I'll take them to the serger and serge all 4 of those seams. I'll be starting at the finished edge, and I don't want to have a tail of serger thread on my finished edge. So I've shown this in some videos before. I'll just serge a couple stitches and then lift up my presser foot, grab that tail, bring it right forward towards me underneath the presser foot, and then lower down and then serge right over my chain. And then I can let that chain get cut off and keep going. So I'll do both sleeves like that. Okay, that gives me nicely finished ends. Alright, the sleeves are done. I haven't given them a press yet, but they already look so pretty. I'm really glad I put that taper in just from the elbow down to the wrist. That looks so much prettier than just if it was straight. So now the body. I want to put a similar width of panel down the side because I just made the sleeve that much bigger, and so I'll need to make the armhole that same amount bigger. This circumference is going to have to fit that circumference. And I think I'll start again with it being just straight and then see if I want to taper it toward the bottom. This ribbing on the bottom, I think I might as well use it again. So the top is going to be about there. That's the length of the band. Then I want 2 pieces that are 6 inches wide, and it just fits. So then I'll go right side together with the back, and then I'll bring it over to the front. It would be smart if I just baste it in place, try it on, decide if I want to do a taper, and then serge it. So for basting, I just have my machine set to the longest stitch length, and then I'm just going to whip down all 4 of these seams. Okay, so now I'm kind of struggling. I've got those lace panels down the side, and I've done some fitting because it was just too wide, and the wider it is, the more movement you get, and then that lace is really sheer, and you just don't want movement around like that around your waist when it's super sheer. So with it narrower like this now, I think that's going to be fine. And actually, you know, I always do like a sleeveless top because I just get so hot all the time. I think it's actually kind of pretty even right now, but I do want to keep the sleeves. I've got this part on inside out so I could do that fitting, but now the sleeve I think is quite nice. I'm glad I did that taper. It's just more feminine. It looks almost like a Juliet kind of sleeve. It looks really pretty. So now putting the sleeve back on, you can see that the shoulder is quite inset here. Do I really want to just pull that up? But then that looks like quite an abrupt change here. Plus, the thing I'm really struggling with is the neck. This turtleneck is the whole thing. It's like pulling a woolly sock over your head. It's just not a great feeling. I do want to keep the turtleneck because I love the look. So I have a thought to kind of solve both things, like this abrupt change from the cashmere to the lace to kind of blend it into the top more, and also to give me a little bit more breathing area in the neck. I'm thinking of like a lace shape set into that shoulder seam, but coming up into the neck, almost like a modified raglan. I'll be able to add like an inch into both sides of the neck for the actual turtleneck. I think I'll be able to steam and block that out to just get that to sit a little away from my neck. It's mainly this actual neckline that is just wants to hug me too much. I don't want to be hugged that much. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to take a line kind of like that and have that part lace. I'll make it an inch bigger than the original cashmere. Give myself some room to breathe on the back as well. I was trying to keep this one really simple, really straightforward, really quick. The skirt was quick, right? That was good. But this one is just getting a little more involved than I wanted, but I want to be able to wear this. I don't like to just make things for a video and then chuck them. Like, that's not sustainable, right? The whole idea is to be sustainable. So I got to get this to the point where I will actually wear it. Okay, let's try that. So after doing that bit of fitting, I've got that much extra lace sticking out, but it does look a lot better. I'm going to re-sew and then serge. And this lace is lightweight. My serger's not going to mind just chopping that off for me. Coming off a finished edge, I'm going to let my needles just clear the edge. Put the needles down, lift up, wiggle, wiggle, and turn. This is what I have left of the lace. I folded it in half. This is kind of the area I'm going to have to work with. And I'm just going to fold that in half again, which means basically I don't have enough lace. That's all I have, so that's what it's going to be. Okay, I think I will just cut straight across there, and then I'm just going to lift up and trace. This is a little rough. At the neck, I want it to be a little bit bigger than what I've got drawn there. I think that's going to do the trick. Yeah, I got that little shoulder seam opened up. And I opened up a little bit of where the turtleneck attaches to the neckline. I'm on shaky ground here though, because this is going to start to unravel. Now I want the lace to hopefully connect to the lace here to kind of bridge that gap. I feel like if this works, then it's going to go back together quickly. And my apologies to the art of knitting. So maybe I'll baste my two little seams here and baste the neck closed before I try it on. Okay, all four of the seams are basted. I still haven't cut off the corners of the original. I don't want the turtleneck to start running. I'm just going to put in a basting stitch just to temporarily hold those, but I will finish that more properly. I tried it on and it's surprisingly good. I actually think I might love it. I'm going to serge these and then I'm going to finish the neck fold properly. I'll set the sleeve back in and I can't wait to show you. I think it's so pretty. I was hitting a low point there. I just did not know that this was going to come together, but I think it's good. Because I reduced the amount going into the side, then the amount at the top of the sleeve, which was supposed to be the same, is now bigger. So the whole sleeve is bigger than the armhole. So that means I have some room to do some gathering of the lace at the top of the sleeve. So I'm actually really glad of that. I think that's going to make it even prettier. And so the sleeve is all pinned in. I'm going to baste around and then try it on. Kind of using one pin to sort of push the gathers under the presser foot until I get to the next pin. I tried it on with one sleeve and it's beautiful. It's so cool. It's one of the coolest things I've ever made, honestly. So I'm going to serge the sleeves now to finish that off. The neck edge, I'm going to have to do with a needle and thread and catch every one of those little loops. So I've got just this bit of wreckage to deal with, and I want to be able to stretch that as much as I can. I need this area held in a stretched out position for me, so I've got a rolled up towel shoved in there. This would be better if I had a tiny crochet hook and matching gray yarn. I'm taking just a little tiny stitch at the end of each of those little loops and tucking in the raw edge, like bringing my little loop over on top. And I'm not a knitter, but as long as I can get it to the point where it looks acceptable, I will be very happy. This is stressful, I tell you. I just have to be careful I don't sew it to the towel. So I'm trying to like bunch the lace in a little bit, take a stitch, and find the next little loop in my stretched out turtleneck. Okay, so you can see my edge here. So I'll do both sides like that, and then also the same exact process, but from the inside. There's a whole other layer like that. A knitter could do a better job than that. But you know what? That is okay for me. I'm quite happy with that. I didn't think I'd even be able to get it that good. So the neck is a little bit bigger now because of the lace inset, and that's looking great. But to block it out even a little bit more, I've got it stretched a little bit, just a gentle stretch over the end of the ironing board. And then I'm just going to steam that. Just with a little bit of heat and steam. and then let it dry and cool in that stretched out position. Then I'll spin it around and do the same thing on the back. So I'll just let that cool like that. Okay, there's the finished product for the sweater. I have to say I just love how it turned out. It's comfortable now, whereas before I just was being suffocated. Now it's really comfortable, and I think it's really feminine and pretty, but it has a bit of an edge to it, which I really like. So the skirt turned out great. I love the skirt with the black top that I was wearing at the beginning, and with the jacket that I made in the previous video, which I'll link here. But then the sweater with the skirt I think makes a lovely outfit too. A little bit more daytime, I think I'll get a lot of use out of both pieces separately and together. So I hope you had fun watching that crazy process. I hope you learned something, and if you did, you know what you gotta do. Gotta hit that subscribe button for me and give me a thumbs up. That really helps a lot, and I appreciate it so, so much. So thanks for joining me today. It's great to have you along, and I'll see you next time on Catherine Sews. Until then, you take care.